So you're welcome back to our reading circle of Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind by Suzuki Roshi. Very short chapter this week. Mind Weeds. This is Myozan Kodo from Zen Buddhism Ireland and the Blue Mountain White Clouds Hermitage. You should rather be grateful for the weeds you have in your mind, because eventually they will enrich your practice. Suzuki Roshi highlights how the things that appear to be problems in our Zen actually can be quite the contrary. I think of my own beginnings on this path, I suppose. I started to meditate when I was a college student in the 1990s. And the reason I started to meditate is because of anxiety and panic attacks. And I needed a way to explore the space between the initial stimulus and the response of panic. I needed to, I suppose, navigate my way around that space of freedom between the spiraling anxiety and panic that resulted from the initial stimulus, whatever it was, fast heart rate, and everything started to accelerate. So as a student, I was brought to meditation because I had mind weeds. I had a problem. And I think this is a typical story, my story really. A lot of people start to meditate because of anxiety, dissatisfaction, depression, stress. So, um, so it is the mind weeds, it is the problems that brings us to the practice. So we should be grateful for these problems and thankful that they brought us to Zen and to practice. Many years later, of course, I read Kodo and his idea that Zen is not utilitarian, that Zazen is useless, and it took me a long time to realize that the meaning of that statement. That for me, for many years, meditation and Zen was like a jewel or a piece of jewelry that it could be bent into a ring, or it could be bent into a bracelet or a necklace. In other words, it could be made to serve some function, but that which made the jewelry itself, the gold, was what was precious, not the function that it was bent to serve. So the pure gold of Zazen, before it's a bracelet, before it's a ring, before it's a necklace, is what one comes to appreciate, I think, in practice. But these mind weeds that Suzuki Roshi talks about, we should be grateful for. When the alarm rings early in the morning and you get up, I think you do not feel so good. It is not easy to go and sit. And even after you arrive at the Zendo and begin Zazen, you have to encourage yourself to sit well. These are just waves of your mind. In pure Zazen, there should not be any waves in your mind. And this is kind of an aspiration, not even an aspiration, but a statement which in fact can never be true, because the mind always creates waves. Now, of course, as one continues to practice, there are times when those waves are much quieter. We say, pulling out the weeds, we give nourishment to the plant. We pull the weeds and bury them near the plant to give it nourishment. So even though you have some difficulty in your practice, even though you have some waves while you are sitting, those waves themselves will help you. So Dogen's instruction, his first instruction to study the self, is inevitable without effort when we sit in Zazen, when we assume the posture and our breathing slows down naturally, and our mind naturally becomes quiet. We start to see the habits of mind, of our mind. So before we forget the self, we study the self inevitably in zazen. And what we're studying are these weeds, these waves, these recurrent patterns and obsessions. And we're not studying them in a conscious way, we're merely noticing them arise and pass out of being. Um, Strictly speaking, any effort we make is not good for our practice. This reminds me of, again, Kodo. Excuse me, that we need we need the effort to bring us to the cushion, and we need the effort to begin the practice. But at a certain point, that effort is abandoned and falls away. It is impossible, however, to attain absolute calmness of our mind without any effort. We must we must make some effort, but we must forget ourselves in the effort we make. In this realm, there is no subjectivity or objectivity. Our mind is calm, without even any awareness. In this unawareness, every effort and every idea and thought will vanish. So Zazen isn't some kind of mindfulness meditation where we are aware of ourselves being aware, or we are aware of and mindfulness, I'm not knocking it, believe me, I understand its great value and its transformative power in people's lives. This is just something that's different. This is Shikantasa. And it is not an awareness of the self being aware. Yes, there may be an awareness of the breathing, but then it is forgotten. It is given up. The self is given up in Shikantasa, in Zazen. And this happens naturally as we may study the patterns of the mind and of the self, but ultimately we forget our breathing. We forget that we are sitting. And this is the unawareness, really, that Suzuki Roshi is pointing to. It is the dropping off of body and mind. It is the blurring of the boundary between self and others. The ultimate direct understanding of interconnection. Not even understanding in an intellectual sense. The 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 encounter, the direct encounter with everything that exists and the self as part of that. No separation, not two. We should try to consider our effort. We should try to continue our effort forever, but we should not expect to reach some stage when we will forget all about it. So we always have to make the effort to return to the cushion and sit. We should just try to keep our mind and our breathing. And then he goes on to say that we eventually we forget our breathing. This is the way we practice. Once you understand our innate power to purify ourselves and our surroundings, you can act properly, and you will learn from those around you, and you will become friendly with others. There's almost an idea. Well, there is an understanding that the precepts, that the ethical precepts and the natural compassion of our hearts and minds is integral and innate to the wisdom of our practice. And I mean, if you read The Mind of Clover or other books on Buddhist ethics and Zen ethical behavior, you can see that it is not separate to our practice. That wisdom and compassion must be simultaneously present. And um, what Suzuki Roshi is indicating here is that this comes naturally. The precepts and ethical behavior comes naturally out of Shikantasa and out of wisdom practice. And these imperfections that appear to be imperfections are in fact our perfections. They help us improve ourselves. They help us not be saints, but be human beings with all our weeds and flaws. It is the human being that can become Buddha. It is not the Buddha as some kind of perfect saint. So I better leave it at that. That's Mind Weeds by that chapter Suzuki Roshi, Zen Mind, Beginner Mind. We move on next time to The Marrow of Zen on page 38 in my book. So Myozan Kodo at gmail.com if you've any comments. I better answer the doorbell. Zen Buddhism Ireland and Blue Mountain White Clouds Hermitage. Thank you. See you next time.